episode 97 of Coffee & Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So it is new.
It's a new year.
It is a new year! It's 2024.
It's wild.
We're starting, I guess, so our podcast started in 2022, in March though, like March or April.
Mm-hmm.
So technically we're almost at our 2-year mark.
Mm-hmm. So much fun.
So it is so fun. I'm really excited. So Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
So we're starting, the Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent today. And to be fair, I feel like this one, like a few of our other books, like most, I feel like of our other books, we have history with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, we've got history with all of SJM's books. We've got history with, like Vampire Academy and like all those sort of books.
From Blood and
Ash. From Blood and Ash, like all those, we have history with.
Yeah.
We don't have any history with this book at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because normally it's, the first week of our new book, so we talk about how we got into this book. We actually chose this book specifically for the podcast. Neither of us have read it before.
Yeah.
So, there's not a whole lot to say about how we got into the book or the series because we're just getting into it.
Yeah. I guess, usually the only times we blind read a book and take notes at the same time is if, you've read it and I haven't. I'll sometimes blind read it. Like, we did that with A Touch of Darkness, A Touch of Ruin, those books.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever had to do that. Did you? Oh, Neon Gods.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did it for Neon Gods, yeah.
That one. And then the only other time we picked a book and we were like, okay, we'll do this book was Iron Flame. And
Fourth Wing.
Fourth Wing, yes, sorry. Fourth Wing. And instead of taking notes, we just read right on through because we were like, we enjoyed the book. I think the difference with this one is it's a bit more of a time crunch for us.
Yes.
I don't really have time to read the whole book and then do the notes. So I was kind of forced to do them.
Yeah, and I will say I found it quite painful because I wanted nothing more than to just read right through.
Yeah.
So much so that I'm actually doing that with the sequel.
Yeah.
Right now, the next book, I'm just reading it. I think I'm 70% in.
Yeah.
So
I'm only
literally all I did.
I'm only a chapter later than this week. And I was reading it last night and I was like, I'm going to finish this chapter and then I'm going to go back to here and do my notes for this chapter. Because I was like, I was too tired to take notes, but I wanted to know what happened. But yeah, so I haven't finished this book yet, so there won't be spoilers, I wouldn't say, for the whole book during it, because I'm only done week 1.
Right.
I guess that's really all we have to say. So yeah, I guess we'll just get into it, because we have a bit to talk about the author and this series. So just a heads up, this is not a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy.
So, again, we're doing The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. So, Carissa Broadbent is an author who really likes to write about badass ladies and a pinch of romance. And I say a pinch, it's a liberal pinch.
Yeah.
There's a good sprinkle.
Okay. This was just her Goodreads. She wrote that she likes a pinch of romance. So I haven't gotten to any romance yet. So I was like,
right. Yeah, no. She's good.
Cool. Good to know.
So she has a few different series out. She's got 3 books that are part of a Voltaire series that came out 2017 to 2019. She's got a trilogy called The War of Lost Hearts, and there's a prequel for that coming out soon.
So the book we're reading now is part of the Crowns of Nyaxia series, and it actually is going to have multiple unrelated books in it. It's like a big world, I'll say.
We don't actually, but to be fair, we don't actually know if the 3, 4, 5, 6, if they will be related. They might be related. Like,
true,
might have
I guess.
similar characters.
Yeah.
Like, we might see the same characters.
Yeah. But it seems like they're cut into their own duets. So, like,
yes,
I would assume you could read, like, start anywhere when the whole series is out. Like, if they're their own duets, you'd think, kind of like Shadow and Bone trilogy and Six of Crows. Technically, they have relating people, but you could read either one first.
Yeah.
So,
it's unknowns at this point.
But yeah, we don't know at all. What we do know is that this is the first duet. It's the Nightborn duet, and it starts with this book and then continues with the Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. There is a 6 Scorched Roses book, which is actually a novella, which is based on a side character's past, who you see in book 1, the one we're reading now.
Book 2.
Oh, and book 2? That makes more sense. Gotcha. And then there is a standalone in the same universe, Slaying the Vampire Conqueror, which I think is unrelated completely, but again, we haven't read it, so hard to say.
Yeah, I think I read on her website that it's completely unrelated, but like a character that you know from this duet, like, will crop up at some point, or maybe several characters. Like,
gotcha.
They make an appearance.
Cool. So yeah, it's a bit hard to wrap your head around everything. Like I said, I've only read week 1 of this book, so I also was just avoiding spoilers while I was looking stuff up.
Right.
But there's supposed to be 2 other duets in this series. The next duet is the Shadowborn duet, so we kind of assume that the 3rd duet will be the Bloodborne duet, but I don't think that that's known.
No, we're just assuming.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of books in this, so we'll have a lot left to read after this one.
Mm-hmm. But we also, like, so far, it's only the novella, the standalone, and the 2 in the duet that are released as of right now. There is no release date for book 3.
Yeah.
Right now. Like, none at all.
But, like, it seems like she's writing pretty fast, because these 4 books, well, 3 books in novella, and then the 3 books in the War of Lost Hearts series all came out since 2020. So that's like 6 books in a novella in 3 years.
3 years.
And they're like, from what I've read of this one, I obviously haven't read anything else, but like, they're well written and like not, it doesn't seem rushed. So like,
yeah,
I'm happy with it if she keeps coming out this fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, I find there are a lot of similarities. Like, she seems to have pulled from a lot of books that we have read. Like, I'm getting a lot of similarities and a lot of influence from other books, but it is well written. Like, she's a good author. Mm-hmm. So I'm really pleased with the quality of writing.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, so I guess we'll just get into it. So this week, week 1, we are reading the prologue to chapter 13. So there's a really interesting, I'm going to call it phenomenon in this book. So we start with a prologue, but there are also like flashbacks interspersed throughout the book called interludes. And it's giving us like a look back at like, the past, and they're actually really neat. I really enjoy them, because it's not every chapter, it's just, like, when it's needed, and I really enjoy it. It's all written in italics. Oh, also, forgot to mention, if anybody has Kindle Unlimited, this book is free, is included on Kindle Unlimited right now, so that's how I initially read it. I do have a physical copy of the book, but I lent it to a friend. So yeah. So if you haven't got a copy, go read it on Kindle Unlimited, because it is really good. Yeah. So we start with the prologue in the point of view of a king talking about his greatest love would be his ruination, and it comes in the form of a tiny human child. So they straight away tell us, they straight away tell us that the little girl is between 4 and 8, but they can't really tell because she's so tiny, and she's the only living mortal for hundreds of miles. We also get that she's standing in the rubble of her house that was burned to ash, and her family were either crushed in the wreckage and are dead, or they were taken by predators during the night, because in this world, humans are nothing but prey. So 3 men with black, featherless wings. So I'm thinking straight away, bat wings, a la Akatar.
Yeah.
And they're also wearing the uniform of the High-Edge Nightborn King. Land in front of the girl, and she is, like, struggling to get away with them, but she's pinned underneath the rubble and can't. So they're, like, thinking about, like, how she's gonna make a small meal, but a good one, and they're hungry. So they try and grab her, and she actually bites one of them, like, on the finger or something. And they all have, like, pointy teeth, obviously. So, and they compare her to a lamb and, like, talk about eating her. But, like, right before they go to, like, pounce on her and actually eat her, a shadow lands in front of them. It's the king of the High-Edge. And they're, like, a race of vampire. So he sees her and approaches her, and she bites him too, but, like, he isn't worried about it. He just lets her bite him and, like, hold on tight, and she's, like, trying to bite his finger off, and he's like, that's okay. And he actually likes that she's scrappy, and he calls her, like, a serpent. So, like, we already have our title here, like, the serpent and the wings of night, right? Because they all have black wings. And then he says he thinks in his head that he sees something of himself in her. Easter egg for book 2. So he picks her up, even though she struggles against him, and he reassures her that she is safe with him. And then he uses his magic to force her to sleep, and he tells his men that he will deal with her by taking her home. And it goes on to say that historians will look at this moment as a pivotal one in history and question why the Vampire King did this. So, we go to the present, like, the assumption is the present. And there's the person, we don't know their name yet, we don't know who they are, is hunting at night. And they call it a shameful rebellion, but they do it at night when they're at a disadvantage because their prey hunt at night too. So the person is in the human quarter of the city, and apparently it's supposed to be safe in the human quarter as they are citizens of the kingdom. And then it's mentioned that they are inferior members of the kingdom, but still, like, they are still members, so they should still be safe. So she said that she's stalking a Nightborn with wings, and, like, these first few chapters are a little bit confusing because they sort of, again, like, we're trying to build a world here, so I get it. But there's a lot of mention of words and names that are a bit, like, it just gets a bit confusing.
Yeah.
So in this world, I guess there are 3 houses of vampires. I guess we'll say, like, 3 overarching races of vampires. There's the House of Night, the House of Shadow, and the House of Blood. So they each have their own kingdoms. However, in the House of Night, there are 2 sort of
warring
species. So there are the High-Age. I don't even know if I'm saying it right, but I'm just going with it. And they... You think that's okay?
Yeah. I did listen to some of the audiobook, and it seems like that's what I heard.
So there are the High-Age, which have bat sort of style wings. And then there are the Rishan, or whatever, which have, like, eagle, like, they have feathered wings. But they're both night-born vampires. So, she is stalking a High-Age vampire, who is, in turn, stalking about a 10-year-old boy who's out after dark. And the author is thinking, like, this boy is an idiot being out after dark. Like, but she's like, maybe the mom has been, like, super careful every other day and just had a momentary lapse that day. But, like, it's not normal for people to be out after dark. Like, they're not safe after dark. So the person drops behind the vampire and he smiles and moves to attack, but the narrator discusses how they've done this hundreds of times and have perfected their technique. So they slash the wings off first, and she talks about how easy it is to slash off High-Age vampire wings because they're, like, thin and papery. And then they fight the vampire and slash at them with their sword, and the character, we don't know who it is yet, has soaked the sword in a paralytic, and which, like, slows the vampire down, and then they push their dagger through the vampire's heart. So after the vampire dies, the narrator notices that the family is watching them, and the character doesn't know what to say to them because they are different, like, they're apart. So they just, like, slink into the shadows and, like, walk away. And the narrator goes back to the castle and sneaks into, like, she doesn't sneak it, they don't sneak into their own room. They sneak into, like, a servant's quarter, I guess.
Yeah.
And talks to an older woman named Ilana. And Ilana calls the narrator Oraya. And I'm assuming that's the name of our character. Mm-hmm. So we finally have a name. So you can tell that there's, like, this easy affection between Ilana and Oraya. Ilana gives her a dress that she grabbed for her, but Oraya's like, I would never wear that because it's bright. And, like, it was, like, a bright, like, purple dress.
Mm-hmm. Like silky.
Yeah, like silky and slinky, and she was like, I could never wear that because it's bright and it can attract attention. And she was like, the flowiness of it could also make it easy for someone to grab her, and it could also restrict her movements so she can't fight or flee. And she mentions how she essentially lives in danger all the time.
Great life.
Yeah. So, like, she's in danger 24/7. And it mentions how Ilana is the only other human in the castle. And Oraya says, like, she grew up in this castle, and Ilana is, like, unique among humans. So she has puncture marks on her neck and wrists, and essentially she gets paid to feed vampires. and
Does
she
she get
likes
paid?
it. Yeah.
Okay. I thought she just got, like, a place to live that wasn't...
No, she does get paid for it as well.
Cool.
So yeah, so like, I guess that's considered unique amongst humans, because most humans are not going to willingly be like, here, feed from me.
Yeah.
And like, I guess should they talk about how, like, there's no guarantee that, like, there's nothing stopping the vampires from draining her dry, but she's like, hey man, I'm 70 years old, like, I've sort of lived my life, so like, if this is how I go, then I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So Oraya tells Ilana that she's leaving for a while, and Ilana's like shocked, but like, I guess when she says like, oh, I'm leaving for a while, Ilana's like automatically knows what she's doing. Like, she knows what she's leaving to go do.
Yeah, and we don't.
And we don't. It's super frustrating because it's like they're talking in code.
Yeah, and I'm like, why? What? Just tell me.
Like, what's going on? And she actually asks Ilana to leave the inner city for a while and maybe go live in like a protected area of the slums, because something is happening, and they sort of mention that it's the Kajari, which is like a tournament, and apparently like humans are used in it, but we don't know what for. And she mentions how like really her father, Vincent, not her actual father, but has raised her, and Ilana are like her only family, so she really wants to keep Ilana safe. Ilana is like really concerned for her, and she's like, what is he making you do? And she's like, well, he's not making me do anything. And she like pleads for Ilana to leave, like even for a week. And she's like, okay, fine, I'll leave in the morning. So she goes back up to her room, and she sneaks in like just in time. But we learn that the city is called Sivranaj. There's some really interesting names. I wonder where they come from. Like, yeah. I wonder, like, what the origin of the names are. Because I don't know, maybe she made them up, but, like...
Yeah. If she didn't, it'd be interesting to know.
Whenever there's a J at the end, I always think that it's a word backwards.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not. Generviz. Still not a word. So... No. Sivranaj, same thing with like high edge. High edge ends with a J. So I'm like, high edge, that's J. Again, not a word.
Yeah, there's a lot of words with J's, like even the Karaji.
Yeah.
J. Many J's.
There are lots of J's. I mean, it's fine though, because J is an underrepresented letter.
Sure.
Anyway, so she's in the city. It's called Sivranaj. And, like, she's got a really lovely view from her little tower. Vincent, a.k.a. her, like, adopted father, comes into her room. He's the king, so it was implied that the prologue is the same characters, but we didn't have confirmation until really now.
Yeah.
So she is the small child that bit the king's finger, and he rescued her. So he's the king. She calls him Vincent, but he is her father, and he calls her his daughter.
Yeah, and she calls him father to other people, but not to him.
Yes, yeah. So like, we also get her age, so she is 23, which I love. I love that she's not like some simpering 17, 18-year-old. Like, I like that she's a full-blown adult.
Yeah. Although I don't think I was a full-blown adult at 23, but I didn't live in this kind of world, so.
No, yeah, like, agreed. And she's been with him for quite a while. Mm-hmm. Right? What? They don't know if she was between 4 and 8, although further on, like, I can't see, the books are blurring together for me a little bit.
Yeah.
But
the next interlude, it's 5 years after she was found, and she's 11, so we assume she was 6 when she was found.
Okay, because the way, so, like, at the point I've gotten, not to, like, spoil anything, but, like, I've gotten a couple of flashbacks of her during, like, the last night, like, during when her house was ruined. Like,
yeah, I think there is one this week, too.
And she seems very young. Like, she seems more along the lines of, like, 3 or 4. Like, just in her mind. And the way that her family treats her, just, it seems like she's way younger.
Oh, okay.
But, anyway, so I don't really know. Like, I don't know if we ever get, I mean, you said that she's 6, so I guess we'll take that.
Because, yeah, it was like she'd been there 5 years and she was 11, is what I'm pretty sure they say.
Okay. Anyway, so, yeah, so, like, she's 23 now, so that means she's been there for, like, a good while.
Mm-hmm.
And she mentions that he's afraid for her because she is competing in the Karaji. And if she wins, she'll be freed, but if she loses, she'll be damned. So immediately I'm like, freed from what? Yeah. Like, I think the she'll be damned part is self-explanatory, but, like, if she's freed, what else she be freed from? Like, is he holding her prisoner? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, we don't really understand what that means. But, like, I also, like I said, I'm not super far into the book. I was like, this, like, a fight to the death? We don't, like, it seems...
It's never really clarified.
Yeah.
Like, it is and it's not.
Yeah.
So, like, at this point, I'm sort of like, is this a Hunger Games scenario?
Yeah, but voluntary, basically.
Yes. Yeah, it does seem voluntary.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Yeah. So, we still... I actually, like, I like it because I feel like we complain a lot when there's heavy information, like, world building at the very beginning, and they're throwing all this shit at us, and we're like, what? Yeah. And, like, I feel like she does a really good job of trickling the information in. Yeah. So, like, we learn, oh, there's something happening. Oh, it's called the Karaji. Oh, it's a tournament, but we don't know what it, like, we don't have all the information yet, but we're getting it slowly in bits and pieces. Yeah. So I actually really liked it. It took me a little bit to wrap my head around the politics and stuff. Yes, yeah. But once I understood the politics bit, I was like, oh yeah, this is fine. Yeah. So I'm really happy with how she trickles the information throughout. Mm-hmm. So they go to train, and in my head I'm like, she just went out fighting and, like, killed somebody. Mm-hmm. Which, like, she said she's done a whole lot. And now she has to train, and, like, she's kept, like, we can tell that, so she was like, oh, I made it just in time back to my room before my father got here. Mm-hmm. So it's like, obviously her father doesn't know that she's going out at night to kill vampires. Yeah. So, like, I wonder, like, what, like, just, like, I wonder, like, is she, like, she must be tired. Like, she literally walked all the way to the Human District, walked back, and now she has to train with her father. Like, would you not be exhausted?
Yeah, but it sounds like she does this almost every night. So, like, you're like, I guess she's used to it.
Okay, so they go to train. And he trains her in fighting, and apparently he's really brutal. He doesn't, like, let up. Like, he doesn't take it easy on her. And we get a lesson in Asteris here. So it's a type of magic that could level a building and kill everyone. And apparently Vincent is amazing at it. And it's, like, a really powerful type of magic that not everybody can do. So, like, it's really rare. So, like, she was talking about how, like, she can actually probably beat Vincent in a hand-to-hand combat, but, like, if he were to release his Asteris on her, she wouldn't stand a chance.
Yeah.
And then it talks about how, like, he's tried to teach her magic. Apparently, like, which I don't understand. Like, humans can anybody do magic?
Yeah, it kind of seems like, so there's different gods in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And you can pull magic from gods, or, like,
right,
something along those lines is the only explanation I've gotten. And I guess, like, anybody could try to do it, but most of the humans are just trying to live. So they're not really trying to.
Yeah. Anyway, so she's not good at magic, apparently.
Mm.
So then she's, like, thinking about how, like, Vincent has always protected her and watched over her. And she says that, like, she lives in a castle full of vampires and they all seem to, like, crave her blood and want her blood. But Vincent has never, ever looked at her that way. Like, he's never craved her, like, he's never looked at her and craved her blood. And, like, he always resists it. So, like, he is the one safe spot she's got in the castle. Like, she says she doesn't feel safe around, like, any other vampires except for him.
Yeah.
So we get a little history lesson. So, vampires in general were created by Nyaxia over 2,000 years ago. And she created, obviously, the Raihn vampires and the High Edge vampires. And they are constantly at war, fighting over the throne of the House of Night. So, I said in the beginning how there are 3 houses. There's the House of Night, House of Blood, House of Shadow. So, these 2 species of vampire are constantly fighting. They're both members of the House of Night, and they're just constantly, they want their own species on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And all heirs to the throne have 2 marks on them to show that they are the heir. They have red on their wings. And then they also have a red mark on their body that is unique to each person. And that mark appears, like, everything shows up on them when the previous ruler dies. So, like, it's, oh my god, what was I going to say? So no one really knows who the heir is until the previous ruler dies. Mm-hmm. And I think it mentions in the book that, like, a lot of times what will happen is, like, so, like, somebody in the king's family will decide, I want to be the king. So they'll just, like, kill literally everybody else in their family so that they're the only member of the family left, so that so that they will become the heir. And, like, there's natural power, I think, that comes with having the mark. Like, I think you get a little bit of a power boost.
Makes sense.
So yeah. So Vincent's mark is on the base of his throat. And he's got, like, red lines, like, outlining, like, everybody's, again, like I said, is a little bit different. So his red outlines his wings, and, like, there are lines going down, like, almost like blood drops going down in the middle of his wings. So next they discuss the tournament a little bit, the Karaji. So he's saying how, like, it can be any day now. It's the mother of Night and Shadow and Blood, Nyaxia, triggers it. So they don't 100% know when it's gonna happen. She just sort of gets to pick, like, they know around about the few days. Mm-hmm. But they never know exactly when it's going to happen. So, and it only happens once every century. And it's a tournament in her honor. So they're doing it to, like, pray to her, respect her, honor her.
Yeah. I really like that, like, she is an active person in this book. Like, not person, she's an active goddess in this book. Like, she's the one that apparently triggers the tournament and stuff. Like, seems like the gods in this world are still around and doing shit.
Yes. So, like, when I first started reading this book, I sent you a text, and I was like, to me, this book is very, like, a mix of Hunger Games, a little bit Akatari, I think, and also a little bit of From Blood and Ash. But yeah, so I find a lot of similarities here to From Blood and Ash. Like, you know, she is same with like Poppy. Poppy is like, she's a fighter, but she can't really act that way. Like, she's in a castle full of, I'm gonna say enemies, but like vampires that would kill her. Like, and I'm just seeing parallels. So we get a little bit more on the trial. So the trial is, the tournament, the Karaji. So it consists of 5 trials over the course of 4 months. And the winner actually gets a gift from Nyaxia herself. So they get to ask her for whatever they want, which is a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Like, she's a goddess. She could sort of gift them whatever it is they want.
Yeah.
But we don't know what Oraya is trying to get yet by winning. So it says, like, she can be freed, but so what does that entail? What does that mean she's got to ask for? So we also learn that, like, any vampire can, and this is what I don't understand. It says any vampire can compete. But she's not a vampire. She's a human. So does that mean if humans want to compete too, they can? And they just don't?
Like, I assume so, but maybe she's just allowed to compete because she's a vampire's daughter. So, like, maybe you have to be her.
Maybe. So, all 3 houses, the House of Night, the House of Shadow, the House of Blood, they're all going to come to the town to compete. So, like, not every single vampire is going to come, but those that want to compete in the tournament definitely will.
Yeah.
And there will probably be, like, small groups. I feel like it's kind of like an Olympics. Like, if you want to travel to go see them, you can. But no, it's not mandatory. So she's like, all those vampires are going to compete, but I'm the one that's going to win, just as Vincent did 200 years ago. So he actually won his Karaji as well. So she gets dressed, and they go to a feast to check out the competition. So I guess they're hosting a feast in the castle for all the competitors. And Vincent goes to get her after everybody has already eaten. And she's like, he always does this. She was like, whenever he brings me somewhere, like, to a feast or something, he always brings me late, so I don't have to, like, see them feeding.
And I guess she's not there when they're hungry.
Right. Yes. So, we learn here, too, that vampires need blood, obviously. They can still eat, but the blood can also be human or animal. And, like, it doesn't seem like, from what I've read so far, it doesn't seem like there's a distinction, but in, like, drinking human blood makes you stronger. Like, that's not a distinction made.
No, they do say, like, human taste better, and, like, chicken and something else are the worst or something, but...
Yes, yeah.
It's just a preference of taste. It's not actually, like, they're weakened.
Correct.
Or,
Yeah. And I think, like, during feasts and stuff, they usually have, like, almost like bowls of punch, but it's bowls of blood.
Yeah.
And there's usually, like, deer blood, and there's they usually offer a few different kinds, and human is just one of them. But again, like you said, they say that human tastes the best, so a lot of vampires just want to drink the best tasting one.
Makes sense.
So they, like, take a tour of the ballroom,
Take a turn.
And yes, let's take a turn around the ballroom. And they discuss some of the vampires that have entered the competition already, and I guess Vincent, like, points them out, and he's, like, pointing out their weaknesses. So he points out a kid, not an actual kid, like, he's about Oraya's age, they think. And he entered, and he's, like, this meek vampire, but he has no canines, and his leg is, like, disfigured and massacred. And apparently his parents did it to him so that he wouldn't pose a threat to them and overthrow them. And apparently, like, that's normal in the world of vampires. Like, apparently Vincent killed his parents and siblings so that they could ascend because, like, vampires are extremely long-living. So if you have a kid and you still have, like, 800 years, you know, and your kid's like, well, I don't want to wait 800 years to be the ruler. I'm going to kill you now.
Yeah. And
like I said before, like, the heir mark doesn't show up on you until the previous ruler is dead. Mm-hmm. So in order for you to get that heir mark, you got to kill everybody. Mm-hmm. So apparently Vincent did it. He killed his parents and siblings in order to ascend and become the king. So, like, they talk about it as if it's like, yeah, of course parents, and of course kids are killing their parents.
Yeah, and for Oraya, she's like, this is the norm. Everybody does this. Like, never heard of anything different, so I don't really care anymore.
Yeah, and this is sort of the opposite situation of where, like, this kid, Ibrahim, like, his parents were like, well, you're not going to do that to us, so we're going to make you weak.
Yeah.
So that's what they did. They essentially made it so he had a bum leg, and they pulled out his teeth so that he was just less of a physical threat. Mm-hmm. So then they run into Jasmine. She is Vincent's head of the Royal Guard. She recently got promoted after the old head of the guard, Theon, died. I included this because I thought it would be important. It's not.
Oh, I was going to say, I feel like he was poisoned or something. Like, it
I
seems
know,
like...
me too. That's why I included it, because I was like, oh, there's something fishy going on here. She definitely poisoned him.
Yeah.
As far as... It never comes up again.
But I assumed the same. I was like, oh, this is important. She's a bad guy. She's trying to get his throne.
Yeah. Anyway.
That's funny.
So I put it in there, but we don't need to know that, folks. So, Jasmine sort of makes a very subtle move to, like, smell Oraya, and I don't know if it's intentional, like, I don't know if she's, just like, ooh, you smell good, or if it's just sort of, like, an intentional, like, sniff, and then, oh, that's a nice, like, you know how sometimes you smell someone and you're like, oh, you smell great.
Yeah.
Right?
But you don't know if she's doing it, like, subconsciously, or if she's, like, yeah I get what
I'll
you're saying.
eat you the first chance I get.
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, I guess Vincent is like, he notices this, and he subtly, like, puts distance between them, and, like...
It's just so funny, because he's sending her into this tournament. But right now, he's so fucking protective of her. You're like... Yeah. She needs some experience around vampires if she's about to go do this thing. Like, when we actually find out what it is, I'm like... How is she supposed to be able to act around them if... I don't know.
Well, but then it's funny, too, because he's like, I'm going to talk to Jasmine about something for a minute. You go take a tour of the ballroom alone.
Yeah. He's all over the place.
So it's like, you don't want her smelling her, but you also are okay letting her walk around the room by herself?
Yeah. Contradictions.
Yeah, so that's what I said. So he sends her to, like, another part of the ballroom to keep her safe. And I'm like, what about every other vampire in the room?
Yeah.
Like, I'm hoping maybe he has a guard on her, maybe, like, but we don't know. It
doesn't really seem like it. But, yeah, we don't know anything, really.
Yeah. So, Oraya, like, leans against a doorway, and she's, like, surveying the room and, like, checking everybody out. And she spots a male vampire with, like, dark red flowing hair and red eyes. And, like, he's looking at a painting, and, like, then they lock eyes for a second. And my immediate thought is, love interest.
100%, yeah.
Yeah. And she spends a little bit more time there. She interacts with, like, a really bubbly vampire, and she's like, what the fuck? Like, vampires are not bubbly.
She's
over like, here, like, you should try this!
Yeah. She's like, please leave me alone.
Yeah. So, like, she is, like, your quintessential, like, prickly, like, I don't want to interact with people, I have no friends sort of a main character.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So, I guess this book is as much about her making connections and friends as it is about her joining this competition.
Mm-hmm.
So, her and Vincent go back to her room. Like, she's not at this ball thing for very long. Because I guess she's exposed. And they chat about her being prepared. So, Vincent competed, like I said, 200 years ago and won. And at that point, the Raihn vampires were on the throne. So they had it. So him winning sort of allowed him to take over.
Yeah.
And we get more on that later. So she is wearing a silver ring with a tiny black diamond in it. And it was in her pocket when Vincent rescued her from Raihn territory when there had been an uprising 20 years ago. So she is actually from a Raihn territory of vampires, not a High-Edge territory. And she mentions that, like, technically, even though he's the king of the entire, like, country, I'll say, or the House of Night, he's technically the king. But he's still also technically not allowed in Raihn territory unless there's an active war situation.
Yeah.
So, like, it was very lucky that he found her.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's from a Raihn territory. He would not have been allowed in that territory except for the fact that there was a rebellion that he had to go squash.
Yeah, but this makes it seem like she was found when she was 3 if the rebellion was 20 years ago and she was...
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like,
yeah.
I thought she was like 3-4, and they talk about how tiny she was.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he said she could be between 4 and 8. So, like...
Yeah.
It
but they
sounds
also
like
say,
she looked
like,
bigger than 3.
Yeah, but they also say, like, we don't know because we don't know how human children age because we're vampires.
Yeah, that's the cop-out.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Anyway, so we get now, that the reason she wants to win the Kajari, and I feel like I've been calling it Karaji this whole time, but it's Kajari, actually. So, you know, that's fun for me.
Happens.
So anytime I've said Karaji, it's Kajari. Anyway, she wants to win the Kajari so that she can ask Nyaxia to become Vincent's Coriate.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of take this to mean like his parabatai.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's...
And, like, at first when they explain it, I'm like, is this romantic? Like,
oh my God.
But it's not. It's not at all romantic.
Sorry, that's just funny.
Well, because they say, like, she wants to become his heart bound.
Yeah. That does, yeah, I get where you're coming from.
You know, that sounds romantic to me. Mm-hmm. So, apparently it would make her a vampire without the risk of turning her, because apparently if you turn... a human into a vampire, there's like a 2 in 3 chance she could die.
Yeah.
So Vincent doesn't want to take that risk. So this way she would become a vampire without the risk. And it also makes hers and Vincent's souls bound together. And it means they would, like, share power. And also I think it means, like, they wouldn't be able to hurt each other.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, she would never be able to turn on him, he would never be able to turn on her.
No. Which makes sense. Because they're getting power from each other. So, like, if one dies, does the other die? Is that, like, a thing?
Maybe.
I don't think it's stated, but I don't know. Based on other books we've read, I'm like, this is what it is.
Yeah. And to be fair, too, like, so she actually mentioned something here that is hilarious. Not hilarious. It's an interesting tidbit that I didn't actually include in my notes, but I felt it important to say. Mm-hmm. So, like, she thinks about how, like, if she is his Coriate and they share power, she was like, he has a ton of power that he'll share with me. I don't really have any. So, like, he's not really getting that much from the situation, but I will be.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the reason that she wants to do it is so that she can be powerful enough to go out in search of her family if she has any left. Because, again, like I just said, Vincent's not allowed in Raihn territory when it's not a time of war.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if she has any living, surviving relatives, he can't go with her to help her find them. And he doesn't trust anyone else with her as a human. So
she can't go alone because she is too weak.
Would die.
But she can go into this competition with vampire warriors.
But I guess it's controlled, a controlled environment, maybe. Like, I don't know.
I guess he's like, if she wins, then she deserves it or something.
Yeah. Anyway, so if she becomes his Coriatai, then she doesn't have to be afraid of being attacked and eaten all the time.
Fair.
Although, like, I do think it's stupid because it would make her a target for anybody wanting to go after him.
Yeah, but I guess he doesn't really care about that. Because realistically, if she wins this competition, she should be able to kill anybody, even if, in my mind, even if she doesn't have the power. But now she's going to gain power, so she's going to be, like, powerful and immortal and fast like a vampire and all that shit, but also still have her skills. So I feel like she should be unstoppable.
I guess. Anyway, so they have to do this, like, little ceremony to allow her into the competition. And so they do it together just in her room. And then she goes to sleep. And that night, she dreams of her family and being happy and feeling safe until the vampires came. Like, she sees them all coming out her window. And she screams and wakes up and realizes that the competition has started and she isn't in her bed. She's in pitch blackness.
You know what this makes me think of? And like I said, I haven't read very far in, so don't give me a spoiler. But Underworld, where Victor kills all of Selena's family and then takes her as his, like, adopted daughter.
Yeah,
I completely forgot that happened, because it, like, I think that's in one of the, it's not in the first one. I don't remember, but I don't think it's in the first movie, but I think we figure it out in
the second one?
Maybe. But, like, we get the scene of, like, she had, like,
I think it is in the first one, because Craven tells her the truth about Victor.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, she had, like, nieces and nephews or something, or, like, a twin.
She had twin girl nieces, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I knew there was a twin somewhere. Anyway, just made me think of that this moment, based on nothing.
No, it's good. Good job. It did not occur to me.
It only did while you were telling me this, so.
Oh.
It's your storytelling.
Oh, yes. Anyway, so she wakes up in pitch black. then we go to one of those interludes I talked about. So it's a flashback to Vincent taking Oraya home after he took her. Apparently she stayed wedged in the corner, like, for ages.
So sad.
Because she was scared, and there were monsters everywhere, aka vampires. And Vincent, like, stayed in her room, sort of like what you would do with a cat.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you stay in their room and let them, like, get acclimated to your presence.
Yeah.
So it's like that. He stayed in her room, and he read, like, I'm saying he read to her. He didn't actually read to her. He just read out loud in her room. And anytime he would leave, that's when she would, like, dart out, grab some food that was left for her, pee, do whatever. And then as soon as she heard him coming, she would wedge herself back in. And it took about a month before she finally came out and ate with him in the room. And he offered to help her learn how to use her teeth and not be so helpless. Back to the present. So Oraya realizes... Back to the future. Sorry. Right? Back to the future, but back to the present. Oraya realizes that she is in the Moon Palace. So it's a place used exclusively for the competition, and only competitors are allowed in. So, like, they're gonna be living there. So when she told Ilana, like, at the beginning, I'm gonna be going away for a while, that's what she means. She's not, like, going away. She's just gonna be living in the Moon Palace for the next 4 months.
A long-ass time.
It is a long time. Like, this is a commitment. But I guess if you're getting, like, a wish from a goddess, is it worth it? Maybe.
Depends how your life is, I suppose.
Yeah. So she tries to feel her way to the stairs to try and get to, like, the highest tower, because she feels like that'll be the safest place for her. Because she'll be able to see everything and, like, get an idea of, like, the layout of everything. Because, again, she's never been inside before. But the palace sort of seems to be enchanted a little bit, and, like, you can try and move where you want to go, but it might not let you go there.
Like, the stairs change and, like, things pop up. It's very interesting.
Yeah, so she said she's, like, she found the stairs and started to climb up them, but, like, then all of a sudden it levels off and she starts going back downstairs. Like, you know, it's just a little bit, it just moves where it wants you to go. So, like, she hears some screaming, and she's like, well, I shouldn't go that way. So she's, like, going upstairs away from that screaming, but as she's walking away from it, it, like, gets further away, but then all of a sudden it gets closer again, so it's like the palace wants her to go closer to the screaming. And as she gets closer, she hears screams and actually recognizes Ilana's voice. So she's like, well, shit, I'm gonna go save my friend. Like, we heard at the beginning, this is, like, her family.
Yeah.
So she goes to run towards it, and again, she still cannot see. Like, it's pitch black. But some guy, like, holds her shoulder and tells her, like, all those people are dead, and if you will be too if you go that way. And she sort of knows that, but she wants to go anyways because, again, like, that's her family.
Yeah.
So she stabs the guy in the thigh to make him go away and let go. So, like, she's running towards the sound of Ilana screaming, but, like, she can't figure out, like, she'll go one way thinking she's getting closer, but then it'll get farther, and, like, it's like the palace is, like, teasing her almost.
Yeah, it's like she's close enough to hear how awful it is, but she can never get there.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
It is very sad. So, like, she realizes she's too far away to save her.
Realistically, if she did get there, she would have just been killed. Like, she can't take on that many vampires. They can see in the dark. She can't. Like...
Yeah. Yes. So, she realizes, oh, the guy was right. So she runs blindly until she finds a greenhouse and realizes, like, this is a great spot because when the sun rises, the vampires won't be, like, they won't want to come in the greenhouse where the sun is, like, you know how hot it gets in a greenhouse because there's all the sun and it, like, gets sunny and hot in there. So she's like, so I guess vampires, like, they do have a reversed schedule, like they do everything at night. They can tolerate a little bit of sun, but
not a lot.
But they can't be out in direct sunlight. They get like blisters and burns and stuff. So she just hides out in there until daylight. And once daylight comes, she feels comfortable enough to explore. So she goes out and she finds Alana's body. And she remembers, like, first meeting her and becoming friends. Like, she was so alive and, like, rebellious. And, like, she's, like, almost unrecognizable now. Like, she really only recognizes her for, like, her body shape and, like, her clothing. So she finds a vampire asleep close by. And she can tell that he's, like, blood drunk. Like, he's super full from eating too much. So he's like, like gorged himself. So he's like, ugh, like in a turkey coma, but human
her
blood
best friend.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's like, you're dead, dude. So she just kills him outright. So she finds this purple silk fabric on Ilana and takes it. And then she also finds a box of matches. So she actually, like, burns Ilana's body before going back to the greenhouse. Later on, she is summoned to the center of the palace by a trail of smoke. And she sees the rest of the competitors. They've all been summoned there. There's about 50 of them. There's a priest now there. He's called the minister. He's like the head of the church. The church like leads everybody and is not associated with the house. So neutral party. And he is sort of considered the embodiment of the goddess and like makes her decisions when she is not available. So and, like, Oraya finds that, like, he's always been really interested in her and, like, creepy with her. And apparently he, like, trapped her in a corner at the age of 13. And Vincent has never left him alone with her again.
Fair.
Yeah. So, again, another, like, creepy, like, another sort of call from Blood and Ash with that creepy Duke. Not Duke.
Oh, the Duke, yeah.
Not the Duke himself, but, like, remember the Lord
Mazine.
Mazine that was always in on it? That's what he reminds me of.
Yeah. Reminds me of the Apparat from Shadow and Bone.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah.
So the minister explains there'll be 5 trials, which we already knew, but there's going to be one every 3 weeks during the 4 months. So during that time, the members will live in the Moon Palace, and they can leave, he says, if Nyaxia wills it during the night. So they're allowed out at night if there's no trial going on, because again, there's 3 weeks in between each one, so like they have time.
Yeah.
But at dawn, they have to be in the Moon Palace. They'll get disqualified if they're not. And, like, I wonder what's involved in disqualification.
Yeah.
Like,
do they just kill you, or, like, do you just go on home?
Yeah, because, like, if you're finding it too much...
Can you just leave?
Yeah. And just not come back?
I know. That's my constant question.
Yeah. So he also outlines the expectations for fighting, like, in the off-season, aka when there's not a trial. Because, like, I think the rules are slightly different every year. Like, some years you're allowed to kill your competitors whenever you want. Some years you're not. So he's sort of cryptic and says, Nyaxia appreciates the gift of blood within the trials. So Oraya is kind of like, does that mean that we have to keep the killing to the trials themselves? Mm-hmm. Or does that mean that it's fair game the entire time? Because technically the trials haven't started yet, so like her killing that guy earlier doesn't count.
Yeah. Because they hadn't heard all this.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm assuming other vampires died last night. Because, like, I just feel like they all got into this place and then they were like, maybe I should just kill some people before it starts. Like, if it was me and I was in a fight to the death, I probably wouldn't gorge on humans. I would have been like, we should kill people now.
Yeah.
How many people are there? Do we know?
So apparently there's about 50 competitors at this point.
Oh, okay, yes. You did say that. Sorry.
Like, it's not limited. So, like, anybody, like, any vampire could have joined the competition. There's no limit on how many people there are. So,
realistically, it started earlier than they thought, and Oraya was last minute getting hers in. Like, I wonder if there was anyone that was like, I'm gonna join, and then it started, and they were like, ah.
Yeah, it's like, shit, now I gotta wait another 100 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the minister says, like, there's gonna be a feast tonight, and the full moon trial is gonna start tomorrow night. So they all go to the feast, and, like, there's a huge abundance of food. And while they're all, like, eating, one guy is, like, she notices he's, like, going around, like, looking for somebody. And then he runs back out of the room and howls, like, ah! And then he comes back in freaking out, saying that somebody killed his brother.
Oh, no.
And we know that it was Oraya, because she killed the guy who killed Ilana.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't say a word. She's like, I'm not getting in the middle of this.
Of course, yeah.
So some guy is like, dude, Clin, calm down.
Dude,
he's like, Clin, dude, Clin, calm down. So the guy's name is Clin. It's a terrible name.
Yes.
And he was like, dude, your brother was an idiot, and that's what got him killed. And the guy, Clin, is like, Raihn Ashraj. Ashraj? It's just so fun to say. He was like, you did this! You killed my brother! And the guy's like, no, I didn't. He's like, yes, you did! And he does not take no for an answer. So he just goes to attack him, and Raihn actually uses the Asteris that Vincent can use really well. That's, like, really powerful and rare. Mm-hmm. Raihn has it, and uses it to kill Clin outright, and Clin just dies.
Yeah. And
Oraya's like, shit, I'm fucked.
And did you say that Raihn is who Raihn is?
Raihn is Raihn is the guy that we said earlier that had the red hair and the red eyes and the one that locked eyes with Oraya during the feast. So, like, the one we said was a possible love interest.
So that's another reason she's like, he already saw me. Even though obviously everybody has eyes on her because she's the only human. But yeah. So just before dawn, Oraya sneaks out and she meets Vincent at a bridge that he basically told her was there and was like, meet me here. So she's like, did he meet people here when he was doing it? Like, did he have outside help? Which is like, that's likely. But she decided before this, she kind of, I guess she's walking to the bridge and she is thinking about how, like, before she left, everybody started searching the palace, the Moon Palace, and, like, found their rooms and stuff, but she decided that it was best to stay in the greenhouse. Because she could be in the sun, and hopefully the vampires wouldn't come kill her. Because the sun is more of a deterrent than a locked door, I think, is what she says.
Yes, yeah.
Which is fair. So, she goes to see Vincent, and she thinks about, like, he's the only person left now for her. Like, he's her only family, with Elena dead, which is sad. And he asks if she's hurt, and he looks at her hand, because she has a cut, but I don't remember.
Oh, so I didn't mention it, but when she was originally dropped in the Moon Palace in the pitch black, she is trying to find her swords that she had on her, and she accidentally grabbed her sword with the sword edge instead of the hilt. So she cut her hand, and she was like, shit, they're gonna smell me even more now. So, so it's not good for her to have open wounds.
Yeah, there was so much happening at that point, I forgot about it. But, so she has a cut on her hand, and she actually has it wrapped up in the, like, purple silk that she found on Elena's body. So Vincent asks where she got it, and she just says she found it in the temple, and he looks kind of suspicious. But then he takes out a little vial, and he drips some liquid on the cut, and it completely heals so that it is only, like, a scar left. And then he gives her the rest of the bottle, but he tells her it's really hard to find medicine that's safe on humans. So to, like, don't lose this, be careful with it.
Yeah, use it sparingly.
Yeah, because I guess most of the healing magic stuff is for vampires. Like, there's not many people that care to heal humans.
Yeah. Amazing.
Great world for her. Then he gives her 2 light black and... kind of seems like black swords, but it seems like they're kind of like his wings in that, like, they're black and you can kind of see red in them, but it's, like, super dark. It's kind of what I imagine.
Yeah.
They were made exactly to her measurements, and they're for dual wielding, which is what she prefers. And they're, like, specially made by, like, special blacksmiths that usually make swords for, like, vampire warriors and stuff. So...
yeah.
She doesn't really feel worthy of them, but she's also like, I will become worthy of these.
These are incredible.
Yeah, and they're amazing.
Yeah.
And they also have poison in them, and then once the poison is gone, you can, like, refill it in the hilt, so, like, that's pretty cool, too.
Yeah.
So he tells her she has to live and to be careful and all that stuff, like, in a dickish way. And...
yeah.
She makes it back just in time. And she's in the temple, not the palace, sorry. And she runs into a wall. But it's actually a person.
Like, how do you, like, it wasn't dark. How do you mistake a person for a wall? Like, surely as you're walking, you can see the person in front of you.
I'm guessing she turned a corner and just, but, like...
oh, okay.
Still.
Yeah.
This bed is so comfortable. It's so hard. You're lying on a fucking person. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I just picture, like, when we were just talking about, like, running into a person, it reminds me of that experiment that I saw on YouTube of, like, women purposely not moving out of men's way, and then they always bang into it because they always assume that women are going to move first.
Yeah.
That's what I sort of think of here, is, like, she's like, I'm not moving out of the way! You better move! Yeah. And then he doesn't move either.
I just think he's standing still. I think he's waiting for her. Like, I think it's on purpose.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think he was waiting for her, and he's standing around a corner, and she just came around and went, poof. And then she was like, it's a wall! Cool. And you're like, it's a fucking person. People aren't walls. People aren't walls, and people aren't beds. And that's a hill I will die on. Anyway, not the point. But obviously it's Raihn. And she kind of thinks he's unlike any other vampire she's met. Like, he has...
of course. Right,
he has visible scars on his face, and she can kind of see, like, more evidence of age on him than normal. Because normally vampires just look beautiful. I'm, like, not saying he's not beautiful, because I'm sure he is. he then basically, he says he thanks the mother that she didn't have these blades last night, or he wouldn't have a leg anymore, which is 100% true. He would have been fucked. And he ends up blocking. He ends up blocking her way because he wants to talk to her. And he knows that she is the Nightborn King's human. So, like, he knows who she is. He's heard of her before. And he tells her that, like, he was trying to save her life last night, but she's like, I'm fine. I don't need your help, basically. And he's like, for now. Yeah. But she starts to think, oh, yeah, it is weird that he tried to save me and didn't just kill me. It would have been so easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's like, I wonder why. Because everybody has an ulterior motive. Like, nobody's to be trusted. That's her philosophy. So she asks what he wants, because he won't let her pass, and he says an apology. And then he says, like, he also didn't turn her in for killing Clin?
I've been calling him
Clin's brother. And she's like, yeah, but you only did that because you wanted to show off and kill him yourself. Like, that has nothing to do with me. And she tells him that she should have aimed higher last night. And, like...
AKA, aim for the penis.
Yes. And he actually laughs, and she's like, this is weird. Like, vampires don't... They don't emote. They don't laugh. They don't, like... It's not normal for her to see a vampire.
They're subdued. Yeah.
And it makes her think of Elena, because, like, that is what they did together. They joked together, and they had fun together, and that kind of stuff. So, like, it kind of makes her sad. And he notices immediately that the emotion on her face has changed, and she thinks of how odd that is, because vampires aren't used to humans, and they don't notice emotions, or they just disregard them, because they don't care. Mm-hmm. So she's, like, surprised that he's noticing these emotions on her face. But she ends up, like, threatening him again and pushes out of his way, like, and goes on. Mm-hmm. Around midnight, a thread brings her back to the Great Hall, and people are already, like, in their own groups. So, like, you can assume that a lot of these people had decided before they came in that they were gonna work together.
Yeah. And I do think a lot of it, people tend to sort of, like, so like we said earlier, like, any vampire can compete, mm-hmm. whether you're from, like, House of Night, House of Blood, or House of Shadow. So I think there's a lot of, like, team-ups within species, we'll say.
Yeah. Within, like, houses.
You know, groups. Yeah, within houses. Like, you know, all the Bloodborns are gonna stick together, and the Shadowborns are gonna, you know, that's how it seems.
Yeah. And there's a weird thing with the Bloodborns, it's from Oraya's point of view specifically, that she's like, they are kind of feared, maybe? Like, you don't really get why yet, but it seems like they're feared and they're very different. So they're very much keeping on their own, and they're not gonna intermingle with other people.
They have, like, yeah, they have a type of magic that's actually, like, cool.
Yeah. So she's looking around at this, and she even looks at the people in the House of Blood, and that they're together, and it looks like there's a woman leader with them, and she's kind of, like, counseling them or whatever. And, like, when I read this originally, I was like, ooh, is she gonna join them? Completely not what happens. But I did think, oh, maybe she'll join their group. But Oraya then thinks, like, the groups are likely getting ready for the Half Moon trial. So that is the middle trial that they do. And it's the only trial that kind of follows the same rules each Karaji? Oh, Kajari. Thanks. Each Kajari. So, basically, in the Half Moon trial, they all fight in pairs or teams, and then half of everybody there is eliminated. And we're assuming eliminated means killed at this point, because we haven't heard otherwise.
Yeah, so that's the thing, is, like, we still haven't gotten like, we obviously know that, like, okay, so she's been given swords, there are weapons, like, they're being sort of, they're like, oh, they appreciate blood during trials, so, like, the assumption is that people will die, but we have not been specifically told that it is a, like, last person standing scenario.
Like, we don't know if, like, the final trial, if multiple people will live, but they just don't win the prize. So, or if you, like we said, if you can just leave during the day and be eliminated, and, like, we don't know anything yet.
No.
But she starts thinking of what this trial could be then, because this is the first trial. And she obviously studied all the past Kajaris. So she is thinking, like, normally the first trial represents Nyaxia's departure from her home in the White Pantheon, which meant nothing to me when I first read this part.
So the whole thing is, like, this whole, like, the Kajari is, like, so we said it honors Nyaxia, so all the trials are sort of, like, it's a representation of her story. And how she became the goddess that she is, and how she, like, and sort of the story of her life. So each trial represents a different struggle that she had.
Yeah. So this is, like, her first one, and, like,
yeah. So I take the White Pantheon to be, like, in Greek mythology, there's, like, Olympus. So I think of the White Pantheon as sort of like that.
Yeah. So she left the White Pantheon. She went past her borders and was pursued by beasts, and she got lost. So this trial is for sure going to include beasts. And it could have something to do with, like, being blindfolded or uneven terrain or something like that. Like, those are things that happened in the past. But she knows there's going to be beasts. They're all just standing there, and someone finally is just like, so what now? And I'm like, is this what made it happen? This random person being like, what now? It's just funny to think that, like, if nobody said anything, nothing ever would have happened. But the Moon Palace disappears around them, and they end up in a coliseum. So there's, like, stadium seating all around them, people screaming everywhere, and they're all holding torches, and it's super bright and it's wild. And they're each in, like, about groups of 7, we're assuming, because that's how big Oraya's group is. But each group is in a dome, and there's multiple domes. So I guess there's, like, I don't know, 13 domes or something to contain everybody if there's around 50-ish people. So they're in a dome with their 7 people, and then there are beasts around. And she is distracted by the crowd, but then she hears Vincent's voice in her head, which is a common thing for her. Like, the voice of reason in her head is
very
Vincent's
common
voice. So we're assuming it's not his real voice. It's just, like, you know.
I don't think so. I think it's just her instincts that are taking on Vincent's.
Yeah, because
Vincent's, like, qualities.
Yeah, because he's the one that taught her and all that stuff.
Yeah, and it's not, they can't mind speak, as far as I know.
Yeah. So his voice tells her to move, and a beast literally pounces where she was. So she would have been killed. Which is not great. So she sees the beast, and she's like, it's a demon. And she thinks she's only seen a demon once before, and it was nothing compared to these. And you're like, okay, we're throwing in demons now. Like, I don't know what that means. Yeah. But there are demons in this world, whatever that means.
I think demons are, like, summoned by magic.
Okay, yeah. And, like, these ones turn out to not be demons anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, I think we see instances of more demons, and it seems like they are summoned by magic users.
Oh, okay. Makes sense. And, like, clearly she's seen one before, so we'll probably eventually get that story, I'm assuming. There's a lot of, like, mysterious things about her past that I'm like, just tell me what happened during this week. But yeah, so the demon beast things move super quickly, so it's hard to even tell how many are in there with them, but she thinks it's between 5 and 10. So she backs herself up against a wall so that her back is protected, which is, like, a super common thing for her. She, like, often does that. Makes sense. And, like, she notices that Raihn is also in her dome, and she's like, of fucking course he is. And she's thinking that everybody there has to be thinking, like, are they supposed to kill each other, or the demons, or both? Like, what is the play here?
What's the goal? Yeah.
She goes to jump out of the way of a demon, but blood magic stops her. So she sees that there's a blood-born vampire in her dome, and he's using his magic to stop her from moving by, like holding her blood still, basically. So her muscles can't make her move out of the way because he's holding her in place. But it's taking a lot of strain, and it's very hard for him to hold her. So he ends up having to let go, basically, as a demon jumps onto her. So she's able to shove her sword through his mouth, the demon's mouth, and, like, venom melts. It seems like his jaw. It seems like melts his whole jaw off. And then he, like, scuttles away. But he's still alive. And then she watches the blood magic user let one of the demons get close, and then a look of terror come over his face as he's just killed. And you're like, clearly he tried to use his magic and it didn't work. He tried to, like, let the demon get close so he could use his magic.
Yeah. My understanding, though, of the blood-born magic is they have to have open access to their blood. So, like, if she doesn't have a wound...
But where was her wound?
Then... I don't know, but it comes up several times, like, that sometimes a strategy for blood magic users is for them to, like, shove their nail into someone to break the skin so that there's blood flowing.
Oh, okay.
So that they can, like, so I don't know where she is injured, but and maybe it doesn't need to be that way, but that was my assumption.
Okay, I haven't really gotten to a part where they talk about it, but, like, I don't think she is injured at all at this point because she had moved out of the way. And
yeah, maybe he's just, like, a really good
one. But yeah, so he tried to use it. We're assuming he tried to use it against the demon and it wouldn't work, and he's like, oh shit, and then he dies.
Haha, that's what he
right
says.
So they're basically all just fighting, and the demon kills 3 of the 7 of them, but all of the demons are still alive, no matter, like, what they do to them. None of them are dying. So, like, something is going on. This isn't, like, if you poison up through someone's head, a demon's head, you'd think they would die, but they're all still alive. She sees that Raihn has his wings out, and they're feathered black and red wings, and she realizes then, like, he's a Raihn, which makes sense because there's feathers. And she's like, his wings are so beautiful and he's so good at fighting. And you're like, this is gonna be a love thing. He's a love interest. But anyway, so he stabs at his demon, like, in the ribs, and her demon flinches, and she's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, clearly there's something happening between them.
Yeah.
So she starts to, like, think it through, and she realizes, like, all the demons are kind of moving like a pack together, and, like, I don't really know exactly how she figures it completely out, but she realizes that the creatures are actually the blood-borne cursed vampires. So we don't really get much about this. I think in the beginning, before this trial, she did see that the leader of the blood-borne, she could see her curse on her neck, and she was like, oh, she's very far along. The next step is insanity. And you're like, but what is the curse? So the reader doesn't really know what the curse is, but we're thinking this is the final stage of the curse. So that's unfortunate. But she also realizes, like, it's likely that there is one demon beast thing that is the lead or the original, and then the rest are spawned off of that. And if you kill the original, all the others will die. So Oraya then yells at Raihn to stab the one that he stabbed again, because she's assuming, obviously, that one is, like, the lead one, because hers ended up flinching. But it's actually, like, super funny, because, like, it's obviously really hard to hear. So she's like, stab him again, you idiot! And I love it. But she points to, like, the main demon, I guess, has a mark between its eyes. So it's kind of, it kind of makes me think of, like, the heir to the throne or whatever also has their own mark wherever. But it just makes me think of that. Just interesting. But she starts to fight her way towards him, and because obviously she's like needs to tell him what's going on. But she also mentions, like, the red mist in the air is burning her skin. So I'm assuming that that's, like, the blood of the three that have died. And, like, are the beasts using blood magic? Because there's no one else bloodborne in her thing. So it must be the beasts. Don't know. So Raihn ends up, like, pinning the beast with his sword. And she is tiny, so because she's a human. So she's like, I just need to get under it and stab it in the heart. So that is her plan. And, like, if she does that, hopefully it'll kill them all. Everything will be great. But then she feels an awful pain in her hip. And she falls to the ground. And she looks over. And she's been shot. So one of the other, like, contestants in her bubble has shot her in the hip with his arrows. And you're like, fuck off, man. Like,
dude, kill the beast first and then worry about each other?
Like, this is dumb. You're
being an asshole.
Idiot. Also, you're a bad aim. Why did you hit her in the hip? So anyway, she goes down, and then, like, the demons come for her because she's bleeding and on the ground. So she's fighting, but she's literally on the ground. But they kind of clear for a second, and she can see the sky, and then all she can see is Raihn's wings, because he's above her. And I love it. She's about to pass out, but he says now, but she can't even hear him, because she's just, like, pretty far gone. And she does do it. She goes over or, like, I guess, leans over. The demon is close to her.
Yeah.
And she stabs it and into the heart. And there's a moment that she's, like, just looking into the beast's eyes, and she just thinks that they're both going to die, because, like, she was stabbed in the hip and the demons ended up scratching the shit out of her. So, like, she's not feeling great. But then Raihn pulls the demon off of her and leans down and smiles at her and says, "Good idea." And he goes to help her up, but she doesn't want to need his help. So she just, like, pulls herself up off the ground on her own. And then the four of them are just kind of looking at each other inside of the dome like, okay, so the beasts are dead now.
Now what?
Now do we kill each other? But the smoke appears again and leads to an archway that goes out of the bubble. So one of the vampires that was in the bubble with them is a woman that Vincent had told her about before. So that person lived and leaves, and then the other is the one that shot her. He lives and he leaves. But she's just still standing there. And she kind of looks around at the crowd, and she's hoping to see Vincent, but, like, she can't see anything. Like, the crowd is too far away. There's too many people. She can't see if he's there. But she notices that, like, Raihn is there too, and he's looking at a dome next to them. And she sees that Ibrahim, I think?
Yeah.
Ibrahim is in there.
Yeah.
Who is the vampire that they saw, whose teeth had been pulled out and his leg was injured. So, like, she's surprised that he's still alive. But then she notices that Raihn had been standing with a woman before they came into these domes. So now the woman is also in that dome. And the woman is wielding real fire, which is something that Oraya has never seen a vampire actually do. So, like, vampires can wield, like, a different kind of fire, but it's not, like, real fire.
Yeah. Like you said before, like, people can harness magic from different gods.
Mm-hmm.
So Nyaxia doesn't have that kind of fire magic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she knows, like, this must have come from the domain of the sun god, which is odd because the sun god and Nyaxia are enemies. So it's weird that one of Nyaxia's children, aka a vampire, can use magic from a different god because they're not on good terms.
Yeah.
And so normally, yeah, all the magic for vampires comes from Nyaxia. Raihn gets this woman's attention and points between his forehead, then at the lead demon in their dome, and then is like, cool, and walks away. So he basically tells her what to do. Oraya, like, limps out of there because she's, like, in so much pain. And she goes to the greenhouse, and she is bleeding badly. And her wounds are a lot worse than she thought that they were. She only has enough potion to heal one, so she has a wound in her hip from the arrow, and she has a wound in, like, her stomach from being clawed by the demon. And she decides that she should use the potion on her stomach because she doesn't know, like, if the demon's claws were poisonous or, like, anything like that. She's like, the arrow's probably just an arrow, and, like, that might not get infected, but the demon one is probably at a higher risk of infection. You don't know what's under his nails. Mm-hmm. She knows that she needs to meet with Vincent, but it's highly unlikely that he's going to have more of this potion just lying around after he just was like, this is super rare, be careful with this. So, not great.
No, she's in a rough spot.
So, Raihn shows up, and she's obviously super defensive because she's bleeding and she's in bad shape and it's not great. But he...
And she's also, like, she's very aware of keeping space between her and all other vampires. Like, she doesn't let vampires into her hula hoop, as it were. Like, she needs to keep space between them because she wants to make sure that, like, they don't eat her.
Yeah. So, yeah, she is, like, super defensive because she is injured, but, like, anytime she's been talking to him, she's been like, get the hell away from me.
Aware of keeping space,
So he says he has something for her, and he actually has some potion, and he takes it out, and he's like, you can have this. But he wants to talk first. He kind of starts to move towards her and is kind of crowding her, and all she can think about is a vampire's bloodlust, and she's assuming that he is going to want to eat her because she smells so good. And she's pulled into a quick memory of someone's tongue kissing her neck and then a vicious stab of pain. And Raihn says, what was that? And she's, like, brought back to the present. And you're like, interesting. What could that have been? He tells her then that, like, everyone was betting that she would be, like, the first to die, but he knew she'd be someone to watch because she is the Nightborn King's human pet. And, like, he's trying to kind of goad her, and it's very much a, like, recent favor situation where she was injured, and he was like, I'll heal you. But he asks her, Raihn asks her if Vincent, if the Nightborn King, taught her to fight like she does. And she's just like, leave me alone. I'm not having this conversation. Like, leave me to be in pain.
Yeah, go away.
She asks him, again, like, what he wants. And he asks her who she's going to align with for the Half Moon trial. So she kind of thinks about it again, and she's like, it's super important to align with somebody strong so that you make it through. But as soon as you make it through, then they're one of your enemies because you need to get through them. So she says, like, the night after the Half Moon trial, a lot of people end up killing their allies in their sleep. So, like, you don't want to be with somebody too strong because then you won't be able to kill them.
But you want it,
So there's
mid-road.
There's a lot to it. And then he asks her to align with him and Misha, I think it is.
Yeah, I've been calling her Misha.
And she asks why. And he kind of gives her reasons or whatever. And then she, like, pushes him for the truth. She's like, I'm not even entertaining you talking to me until you tell me exactly why. And he tells her all the other people he can tolerate are already allied. He's curious about her. And she tells him, like, Vincent can't help her in here, but he says that he doubts that. So she realizes, like, this is also probably, he thinks he might be able to get some advantages through Vincent, through her. So, like, she's like, he won't, but I can understand that motivation. And then she asks why else. And she knows the answer, but she wants him to admit it. And he does eventually say, like, she will be easy to kill after the Half Moon trial is over. So, makes sense. But he does promise if she allies with him, she'll be safe until then. And she kind of thinks, like, she could ally with him and learn his strengths and weaknesses, but 6 weeks is a long time. So she tells him it's tempting, but no. So yeah, he tells her her scent is everywhere, and she's screwed if she doesn't stop bleeding, because she smells fucking delicious. Which I love. I'm like, my baby Twilight heart is like, this is it.
Yes! It's so Twilighty.
I'm here for it. So he still is moving towards her, and she's still moving back each step. And she's finally just, like, again, very violent, very like, no, I'm not aligning with you. She's like, leave or I'm going to stab you. And so he finally leaves, but he says that they're at the top of the Eastern Tower in a suite when she changes her mind. So she leaves an hour before dawn to meet Vincent, but she is super injured, so it takes her a while to get there. And he doesn't show up. And she knows, like, this can't be good. He saw how injured she was. So, like, if he at all possibly could come, he would have come. So she's worried about him. She barely makes it back to the Moon Palace on time. And she's doing very badly. She doesn't feel well. She has to force herself to eat because she knows she needs to keep up her strength. And she's, like, 2 steps away from the greenhouse. And she hears footsteps behind her. And she's still, like, super fast. She, like, drops her pack, pulls out her swords, and turns, and uses one to stab the person behind her in the side, and the other to, like, stop his hand from coming towards her face. So, like, she's very quick. Her wounds open up even worse because she's exerting herself, which drives this vampire even more feral than he was. And he ends up cutting her with his rapier. And she's like, he has a rapier, he has teeth, he has nails, like, she has 2 swords. She can't stop everything from getting her.
She can only defend against so much.
Yeah. So she ends up, like, hauling him into the greenhouse because it's dawn now, so the sun is out. But
yeah.
he's still so feral, even though he's kind of, like, burning a bit. Like, the sun is super uncomfortable, but it's not snapping him out of it like she hoped it would. He's still going after her. So she pushes his face against the glass and, like, stabs him in the heart, but it doesn't get in far enough. So it seems like they have, like, a really strong, like, bone breastplate type thing. Like, it's very hard to get in and kill them.
I just thought it was the same as, like, our breastbone. Like, we have a bone covering up, don't we? No.
Well, yeah. You got ribs.
So I just, like, don't we also have a breastbone?
Yes.
I thought that was a thing.
Yeah. I feel like it's harder with them. I don't know. Because it's been a constant thing that Vincent has been telling her, like, you need to stab harder, you need to stab harder. And, like,
yes,
I don't just think that it's, like, her not being strong enough. I think that, like, there has to be something else to it. I don't know for sure, obviously, but that's my assumption. But anyway, she doesn't stab hard enough. So he's still feral. So she uses, like, the last of her strength and pushes it in as far as she can. And he stops attacking her, but his fingers are still moving, so, like, it's not quite hard enough to, like, stop his heart. But she's able to get away from him. Her stomach is torn to shreds, and she is bleeding like mad, but there's a spiral staircase in front of her, so she just starts hauling herself up there and ends up, like, on her hands and knees crawling up it, and, like, her blood is just, like, seeping down. She's bleeding very badly. It's not great. At the top of the stairs, there's one door, and she hauls herself up to try to get to the door, but she collapses and then, like, slips in her blood and is just, like, face down. Yeah. And, like, some time passes, and Raihn pushes her over and says, that didn't take long, and you're very welcome. And she hears Vincent's voice say, what have you gotten yourself into? And she blacks out. So, yay.
Yikes. Well, I guess we all know she's gonna be fine, because
he found her.
That would be a very short book.
Yes, yeah. So we go back in time now again, and it's to young Oraya, and it says, it's kind of weirdly worded the way that it says, because it says, like, 5 years for a vampire is like a blink of the eye, and then it says, like, she's 11. So that's kind of why I assumed, like, it seems like, but then the last one made it seem like she would have been 3. Anyway, who knows?
Yeah. Maybe it's purposefully not super specific because vampires don't measure time the same way.
Maybe. Yeah. So it seems like it's, like, third person narrated, but it says the king has given her everything she could possibly want inside the walls of the castle, but she can remember her life before that. So one day she asks the king about her family, and she says, like, she knows they're dead, but someone could be looking for her. And she knows that she was found in the Raihn territory, but she asks where exactly, because, like, she pulls out a book with a map and she's like, where exactly was I found? And he doesn't really want to tell her. He tells her, like, it doesn't really matter, you have a home now, like, why are you worried about this? But she's kind of adamant, and he finally tells her that he found her in Salinae. This is when, I think you already said it, but he said, like, he can't go there unprovoked because it's Raihn territory, and she says she'll go, but he says she can't because she's a human. So she asks him to turn her, but he says 2 out of 3 turnings end in death, and he's not willing to do that. She asks what can she do, and he stands there and thinks for a very long time, and she knows not to interrupt him, and she waits and waits and waits, and then he finally says there's only one way she can one day be as powerful as him, and it's with a gift from a goddess. So this is the first time she heard about this possibility, I guess, is what it seems like.
Yeah.
So she wakes up in present time to a laugh, and she notices like the absence of pain in her body, and she's like, oh, that's weird. When I passed out, I was in so much pain.
Yes.
And she sees that Raihn wings are like in front of her, and she's like admiring them because they're beautiful, and there's black and reds and purples, and they're just very pretty. And he's currently actually wrapping Misha's ankle, and they're in the apartment that he had talked about. So Misha realizes that, I guess, Oraya's awake and jumps up and rushes over, but obviously Oraya likes to keep her distance, so she like pulls back a bit.
Yes.
So Misha's like, shit.
Yeah.
He told me to go slow. Like, I knew better than this. But Misha asks her then how she's feeling, and Oraya says that she's good, and Misha is... What?
Do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of Alice with Bella.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we're going to be great friends. Like, it 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
And a little bit, it has a little bit more, too, but they're all kind of like Alice more, Misha, very similar energies. Yeah. Misha tells her, like, she's so happy to meet her, and Oraya's like, we already met, like, you talked to me and asked me if I killed that guy's brother. But Misha's like, she says, like, it was Oraya's idea that saved her ass, because obviously Oraya's the one that figured out what was going on with the demons, and then Raihn told her. So it's different now. She has more respect for her, really. Oraya just thinks that, like, Misha is so on, like, any vampire that she has ever met. But she kind of reminds her a bit of Alana with her, like, loud and unapologetic flair, and the fact that she's just so vibrant and such a, like, big personality type thing. And then she thinks, like, Misha and Raihn are both odd by vampire standards that she knows. Like, they're both not acting how she expects vampires to act. Misha's kind of talking like a mile a minute about the apartment, but Raihn kind of just cuts her off and is like, hey, let's give her a second. She just woke up. He goes over to Oraya and says she changed her mind quickly, and she just says she would have died. And Misha says, thank the gods, not the goddess. So that is interesting that, like, normally vampires thank the goddess Nyaxia.
Yes.
They don't thank the other gods because they're not their children. So it's odd for a vampire to say, thank the gods. So it was just noted. But Raihn says that he has a gift for her for joining their family. And Misha brings over a man's head. And his fangs are... I know. I'm like, why did we think this was going to go well? But his fangs are visible, and she obviously assumes, like, this is probably the guy who attacked her. And a memory starts to overwhelm her, and the words, I have a gift for you, kind of are, like, what set it off. So somebody else has said that to her at some point. But she resets her expression and, like, makes her face look blank and asks what she's supposed to do with it. And he just says, gloat. Like, he's just like, you know. Yeah. And Misha's expression completely falls because, like, she expected them to be best friends immediately. Yeah.
And was like, look, you should be so happy about, look what we did for you.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, but I love her. Raihn says that he's saved her life twice now and presented the head of her enemy. And, like, if that's not enough, she's a super demanding little thing. But she says she helped him in the ring, and, she's sure he wanted to kill this guy and Clint. Yeah. So, like, their interests are mutually beneficial, basically. It's finally starting to sink in now that, like, she has allied herself with them, because, like, at first, obviously, she was just trying to stay alive. Yeah. Misha tells her that the guy that they had killed was actually a real asshole anyway, and he would have likely died from, like, the wounds that Oraya gave him. So, like, she also says, like, it must have been a good fight, because obviously she saw her wounds too. So you're like, yeah. So she kind of studies the head, and she can see the black crimson veins of the blood curse in the head. So, like, I'm assuming eventually we'll get more about the blood curse, but, like, you can see that it turns the veins when somebody is cursed. Yeah. She says it was bloodlust, but Raihn says it was more than that. And that is all we get on that. So that's fun.
Yeah, and I don't know if that ever comes up.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Because, like, it seems like it means something. Misha takes the head away and then gives Oraya kind of a tour of the apartment. And it's giant. There's 4 bedrooms. And Oraya kind of wonders, like, it's insane that this entire temple / palace thing is only for once every 100 years for a tournament where people just end up killing each other. Like, she wonders, like, did people live in here beforehand? Like, what is this place? They set her up in a room that has a bunch of windows because obviously she's not a vampire, so she can look at the sun. So she admires the view, and she thinks of, like, her view from her home bedroom. And from this view, she can see the buildings that used to be so far away, and she can tell that they're beautiful, but they're also crumbling. So, like, she thought that the human part of the human district, they call it, was, like, in bad shape. And she thought it was just because they were humans and people didn't care. But it kind of looks like the rest of the city is also not in great shape. Like, the architecture, beautiful. But it's not being upkept very well, potentially.
Right. Yes.
Which is interesting. Misha brings her food, and she sits at the table with them, but, like, keeps her distance, while they drink deer blood. And she kind of gets into that, like, human blood is preferred, but deer is fine, because she asks them what kind of blood it is. But she tells them that there was no blood earlier. So in the feast room, there's usually food, there's blood, but I guess when she went down before she was attacked, there was no blood left then. So they've kind of deduced that blood is getting scarcer from the goddess, which is not good for Oraya. Because, like, if the blood disappears, then she's the blood.
Yeah, they'll get hungry and they'll be like, num num, snack.
Yeah, so, but Raihn and Misha say that, like, they have a big supply, so, like, hopefully
they've hoarded.
Yeah. They're the reason why there's low supplies of blood.
Yeah.
We don't actually know if that's true, but
like, it's fun, too, because their apartment has, like, a kitchen in it and everything. So I'm like, does it have a refrigerator so that they could fridge it? Like,
yeah.
I don't know.
You'd think. Just go out and get a deer to live in the apartment. So Misha then lights a candle with her fingers, and Oraya asks about the power. And she kind of says she didn't realize that it could come from any of the 13 gods, but Nyaxia. Because she thought, obviously, I think we've said it a few times, that she was the only one that gave vampires power. But Misha says it's possible to use power from others. It just takes the right talents. So that's interesting. And then she asks if Oraya wields magic. And Oraya kind of, like, hesitates. And Misha says that she can feel it, and it calls it shy. And Oraya just kind of says it's never done anything for her, and it's useless. And Raihn says same, even though earlier we saw him use the Asterisk, okay. I knew I had it spelled wrong there, and I was like, that's not right. Someone knocks on the door then, and it's a female yelling out to Raihn, basically, open this fucking door. And Raihn and Misha kind of like have a silent conversation, and eventually he gets up to answer it, and he grabs his sword off the table, and like as he opens the door, he like has his sword ready, and an axe comes down and like meets his sword, and they're like, okay. And the person at the door is Angelica, and Oraya recognizes her as the one who seemed like the leader of the people of the like vampires that were bloodborne. Mm-hmm. So she asks, where is he? And he says he doesn't know what she's talking about, but she attacks him, and like they're both like evenly matched and incredibly skilled, and Oraya's just standing there like admiring Raihn's fightingness, and you're like, yeah,
his fightingness, that's exactly what she's admiring.
Exactly. Eventually Raihn does say it was his fault, and Angelica says it was the human, and Raihn says that he attacked her in the greenhouse during daylight. So like that's like pretty
it's the
dumb.
Truth.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's 100% the truth. But like obviously, like if a vampire's doing that, then like they're really in their bloodlust. They're kind of feral. Like it's not great. Exactly what happened. So she lowers her axe because she's like, oh,
yeah.
But he tells her it was better this way than he be used like one of the ones in the ring. So like they all have kind of realized that the ones in the ring used to be bloodborne vampires.
And now they're the demons.
Yeah. So she then says she would rather kill the human in the trials anyway. So you're like, good, somebody else is after her.
Yeah.
And Raihn's lucky it isn't his time yet. And she leaves. And he says he probably should have killed her. You're like, just then, probably. Yeah. This is definitely going to come back.
Yeah, she's going to be a problem.
Yeah. And that's exactly what he says. Raihn says she's going to be one to watch, and she's a problem. And Misha says she feels sorry for her, which is like, obviously she's like the blood curse, whatever it is affecting her a lot because it's already on her neck. So like she's going to turn soon, and like basically everybody in their house, I guess, is affected by this. So
yeah,
not great.
I actually think that like all bloodborne vampires are cursed with the blood curse. Mm-hmm. Like it affects everybody in the house, and they're just all at various stages of it. So maybe this guy was actually like in the, because it says, remember she said at the beginning that the blood curse like starts off and then like it slowly makes you go insane. So maybe that vampire was like in the last bit of his curse and going insane, because she said she was trying to snap him out of the bloodlust and she couldn't snap him out of it. So maybe he was in the last like throes of his curse too, and that's why he wouldn't snap out of it.
And that would make sense to Raihn being like, she was like, he was in bloodlust, and he was like, was he? That doesn't seem.
Yeah.
It wasn't just that. Like, so that does make sense. Yeah.
But yeah. So I guess that's it for this week. We're done. Week 1.
Yay.
It's amazing. This book actually really hooked me. So like I said in the beginning, like I finished this book and I jumped right into the next one, which is also available on Kindle Unlimited. And it seems like a really good duology. I really like the writing, and this is a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
Because normally a lot of books that are recommended or that we see on TikTok that are really popular, like sometimes it's not. Sometimes I find the writing challenging, like from Blood and Ash. Yeah. Like I like the story, but I found the writing very challenging throughout. And we've talked about it when we did both of the books, like that, you know, it seems like she's going for like getting stuff out quickly as opposed to getting it done well. So I'm pleasantly surprised that I actually really like the writing here.
And like, I love a lot of Kindle Unlimited books, but a lot of the times it is the same thing. They are either like not as well written as traditionally published books.
Yes.
But yeah, I found that this book is really, really well written. The story I love.
Yeah.
So far.
And, like, I'm actually kind of surprised because, like, I'm kind of surprised this book is,
on Kindle Unlimited?
Yeah. Like, I'm surprised it's available on Kindle Unlimited because, like, it does seem decently popular on, like, I think on Book Talk and on, like, on the groups that I'm in, like, it seems like a lot of people know about it. So I'm surprised that it's a Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah, and it's like, it is a bit annoying because the physical copy of the book is available at, like, regular bookstores, but only the hardcover is, so it's, like, over $30 for the book, and, like, the softcover isn't coming out yet, which is odd for, like, they normally do that for the books that are, like, they know people are going to buy them in hardcover, so they don't put out the paperback right away. So it is odd that, like, it's not, I know it's not free, but, like, it is on Kindle Unlimited where you can get it without paying for it. But then it's the hardcover, which is super pricey. It's the only physical one available right now.
Yeah.
And, like, I want the author, obviously, to make money, especially if she's not making much off Kindle Unlimited. So, like, I did buy the hardcover book. But it just seems like a lot of books that are on Kindle Unlimited, there's only a paperback book available. So it is a bit of an odd situation. And you kind of wonder, like, what her deal is with her publisher, if she has to have all her books on Kindle Unlimited, or, like, what's going on.
Yeah, and, like, I'm looking at it right now on Goodreads, and it has 200,000 ratings. So it's not a unpopular book.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway, but yeah. So yeah, I'm very pleasantly surprised by how much I liked this book.
Yeah. And I love vampires. I'm always here for a good vampire book.
Agreed.
With new and interesting things. I love vampire books.
Yeah.
Big fan.
So I guess we're gonna wrap it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions for us, please reach out by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or check us out on Instagram or Facebook at Coffee and Co-Read, and we are coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week, we're going to be reading chapters 14 to 27 of this book, which has the longest title in the world, The Serpent and the Wings of Night. So make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.